again, everyone. I'm Chris Cargill with Mountain States Policy Center. Welcome to Peak Policy. This is a special edition of Peak Policy that we're bringing you on this Wednesday, February 19th, because of what is some history that has been made in the Idaho Legislature. Just moments ago, the Idaho State Senate voted 20 to 15, 20 yay votes, 15 no votes, to pass a universal education choice tax credit. That means Idaho becomes one of the 30 other states, give or take, that has now a education choice bill. Still has to be signed by the governor and get over that hurdle, but still a remarkable day in the Idaho legislature as House Bill 93 passes the Idaho State Senate. Want to bring in Jason Mercier, who's our Vice President for Research at Mountain States Policy Center. We'll also be joined periodically throughout the program today by several legislators who were working on the passage of this bill. But Jason, pretty interesting to watch the debate unfold here and to get to a resolution on this particular topic.
You never quite know with a debate what the outcome is going to be. So you had a lot of arguments on both sides of the issue, but it looks like as long as Governor Little signs this bill, that Idaho is going to no longer be part of the blue wall resistance. And what I mean by that is, as you indicated, we know there's at least 30 states that have this type of policy, but we don't know the exact number because just in the past few weeks, many more have come on board, including Tennessee, Wyoming. Senate just passed a bill today as well. There's a bill moving in North Dakota and Montana, and Texas is momentarily going to be doing it. So as these dominoes were falling across the country, Idaho was running the risk of being basically on the left coast blue wall, if you will, with Washington, Oregon, and California not providing this type of option. But with the Senate passage today of House Bill 93 and pending a signature by Governor Little, we get to come off that and join the rest of the country, and parents and families will have this option going forward.
And Jason, let's take a quick look here at what this bill does. So kind of walk us through it. I testified on this bill as we did some research on it, but walk us through what it does, and then we'll talk about what it doesn't do as well.
Yeah, when we talk about these education choice options for families, there's a lot of different ways. There's the traditional public, right? You have the public schools, you have the public charters, you have the magnet schools. But this additional choice debate has come around. Well, what about those that still don't fit within that system? And you've heard things like education savings accounts. That's what's moving in Wyoming right now and in Texas. You've heard things like refundable tax credits where employers can pay for scholarships. Those exist in several of the East Coast states. What's in House Bill 93 and will be available for Idahoans pending the signature by Governor Little is a tax credit option. So this is when if you are an eligible family and you hit the criteria for the income, you will get a credit back on your income tax return that would allow you then to, whether it's through enrollment in a private school, a micro school, or to help reimburse some costs with homeschooling, provides those tax dollars back to yourself. You're basically getting your money back to put toward the individualized educational needs of your student if you're not fitting within that traditional public system.
And Jason, there are many things to talk about. As I mentioned today, the Senate just adjourned. We are hoping to get a few legislators who are going to be joining us here momentarily in just a couple of minutes. But I do want to talk about and address some of the things that this does not do, because that's important as well. I mean, we heard a lot on the floor just a couple of minutes ago about what this does and does not do. And so here's what it doesn't do. This is not a voucher, despite what others are saying. There's a very technical definition of what a voucher is. That is a check essentially that's written directly to the institution from the state, and that is not happening with this particular bill. There is no money that's being taken from public schools as part of this bill. In fact, if you want to compare and contrast the legislation, this bill accounts for 0.0183%, 0.0183% of the state's public school budget. It does not force anyone to participate, and there are no new regulations on homeschooling families. So overall, our research and the data that we provided, as you know, Jason, was very much in favor of this type of concept because we've seen it work in other states. And speak of the devil. Well, he's not a devil, but Senator Ben Taves is senator from the Coeur d'Alene area. Senator, I assume you can hear us okay?
Yeah, I can hear you, Chris.
Well, congratulations to you. This has been a long day coming. I know you and Senator Den Hartog and just so many different representatives and senators. It's hard to list all of them, but just big congrats to you. What was going through your mind as the vote was playing out on the floor?
Well, we knew it was going to be a close vote. We had figured that we had 17 for sure yeses and 3 maybes. And so it was really exciting to see all 3 of those possible votes come through and us provide the options that are going to be great for the people of Idaho. I'm really excited for the parents of Idaho that now will have the option to get their kids into the best possible situation for each individual child's unique educational needs. So this is a great day for Idaho.
Absolutely, and as you know, Idaho joins the several other states. I say several because there are more than just a few. We'll put that map back up on the screen here because this was critical to the debate, I think, Senator. Had Idaho not passed this, basically, you would have remained part of the West Coast resistance, I guess, in not having more education choice options. But, I think it's important to point out, and I know several of your fellow legislators pointed this out, Idaho has some good education choice options with charter schools and home schools and magnet schools. But it's ironic that a lot of the arguments that we heard today are the same arguments that we heard when those particular options were being debated 5, 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, you look at the charter schools, they're doing great things for the state of Idaho. And I have 3 of my children enrolled at a charter school. Last I heard, that charter school had a waiting list of 700 students on their waiting list. So there's a huge demand and a huge need for education options. And this is a great step in the right direction.
Senator, what's the next step for you? And obviously it's got to go to the governor for his signature, but what do you think the next step is for families, hopefully once the governor signs it or it becomes law?
Well, I mean, the process actually takes place next year is when the actual enrollment in this program would take place. So there's a way, we're a ways out on that, but the eligible expenses will start, is my understanding, in this fall. So there's going to be parents that are going to be making the kids to be enrolled in different options pretty quickly, as early as I'd say August or September.
And we're just going to give this a second because, hey, look who it is. Senator Lori Den Hartog, Senator Scott Grow, both joining us. Both were also instrumental in the passage of the bill. In fact, Senator Den Hartog and Senator Grow put their name on it. So that's always a challenge, making sure that the bills with your names get where they need to be. But senators, congratulations to you. We were just talking with Senator Taves. Kind of walk us through your emotions today as this was playing out on the floor.
It doesn't even feel real yet. I had one of my friends here who was watching from the gallery and gave her a great big hug afterwards. And I told her, I did this for your kids. She has 5 kids, 2 adopted that came during the pandemic, and they have done every single schooling option a parent can imagine. And they have kids with some learning disabilities and issues, and they have tried everything, done everything, and it's for families like that. That's what we accomplished today.
Senator Grow, I was just going to mention, Senator Grow, that you guys tried the ESA a couple of years ago. There's been the Empowering Parents program. Then you kind of brought forward, well, what about if we did it via tax credit? And here we are today, and it got across the finish line.
I actually said that on the floor. You can blame me for the tax. That was the idea I came up with because I couldn't see how we're going to get anything done. And my big fear today was, with all that negative debate, my big fear was if we lost that thing today, school choice would be set back for years. I just don't know how we could come back and get that thing going.
Yeah.
So I think it was a big victory today. And I commend my wonderful co-sponsor here from the Senate. She is an amazing debater. I'm glad it was her and not me running the show. Thank you.
You know, as I was watching it kind of play out, I thought the same thing as you, Senator Grow. I thought, man, there's a lot of negative debate. Where are the positive folks? But let me ask the three of you, how much did this quote help, or did it hurt you? The president came out with a tweet on Sunday, basically saying this had his complete and total support, that it must pass. You got an assist from the White House, and it looks like that helped you get across the finish line.
Go ahead and comment.
Yeah, you know, it's been a wild ride, and we will take the support from any corner that it came from. And so it was pretty incredible to have the president's support and to see Wyoming Senate pass their legislation today as well. It really is a historic day. You know, I think people were so interested or intrigued to, you know, why is the president weighing in on a piece of legislation in Idaho? And I think, you know, he's shown his commitment to families and to education choice and opportunities. And I certainly think it firmed up some of our votes.
Senator Grow, were you going to mention something?
You cut out. I'm sorry, Chris. Say again.
No, I was just going to say, Senator Grow, I didn't want to interrupt you if you were going to mention something.
No, I'm grateful. I mean, it's amazing. The President of the United States would come out on a school choice bill in a little state like Idaho. That is a big deal. And I'm sure there were a ton of people that were pleased by it. And I'm sure there's a whole bunch that were not so pleased by it.
Yeah, I'm sure that was actually the case. So Senator Den Hartog, what's the next step? I was asking Senator Taves as well. What happens now? Obviously, it goes to the governor, and we'll see what happens there. But assuming that it doesn't run into any roadblocks there, what's the next step for families who are interested in taking advantage of this type of program?
Well, first of all, Chris, going through this process has taught me never to take for granted any single step of the process. So I'm certainly not taking for granted what the governor may or may not do with this piece of legislation. I think families need to rally and show their support to the governor for signing this and getting this into law. And then we hit the ground running. The effective date is back to January 1 of this year. So the tax commission can start rolling right away on preparing their software and, you know, doing all the things that we need to work on for implementation. And I think communication and education for families, making sure they understand how this works, what kinds of things they will need to do and be responsible for, will be absolutely key to the success of this program.
One of the things, Senator Grow, that we talked about, and Senator Taves, feel free to jump in here as well. But one of the things that we talked about, and I know you mentioned on the floor, Senator, was the fact that there are so many families who are actually saving the state money because they go to a private school or they go to homeschool. In fact, we did the data and the crunching of the numbers here was $2 billion in savings over the past 10 years. Do you think that was a successful argument when you guys were discussing this, either behind the scenes or on the floor?
I think people tend to have their mind made up based on where their allegiances are, but I use that term in the committee, saying, in essence, our parents of homeschooling and private schooling have been subsidizing public education, I mean, for years. And now here's an opportunity. I care about all kids, not just those that happen to be in public schools. There's an opportunity to help the kids that have, particularly those that have certain circumstances public school doesn't fit. So I don't know if it's helpful or hurtful, but I felt it was a good argument.
Yeah.
And
well,
I had one thing, Chris, add one thing. You know, people said there's no accountability and it's tax and this and that. You know, for heaven's sakes, I have confidence in the parents that they are the ones most concerned about their kids' education. And, you know, when you talk about accountability, if the parent isn't concerned, and there may be some that, you know, we can't say, But the parents are the ones that really are responsible for their kids, and nurturing, just like the statute said. And I have total confidence in them, and I have confidence that taxpayers generally comply. I've worked at for 40 years. They generally comply. There's an audit selection process. It's statistical. I understand that. It doesn't hit everybody, but nor does it when you file your federal or state tax return. But it's there. The law is there, and they risk a felony and imprisonment if they violate this. So I think there's some serious accountability.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think you can get more accountable than that. Particular measure. Senator Taves, Senator Gross, Senator Den Hartog, any final comments here before we let you go? I know it's an extremely busy day, so thank you very much for joining us, but want to give you guys a chance to make any final comments and just appreciate all your work.
Senator Taves, first.
Yeah, I'm just, it's exciting to see this day come, because even though I haven't been in the battle for as long as my fellow senators here, it's really important to my constituents and to the families in my district. And so I'm just excited for the way that it's going to positively impact them in the future.
Yeah, it really is a historic day. Yesterday when, all the pressure was being applied, I had said to some of my
today.
and today, leading up until the moment we were on the floor, I said, they're concerned because we've never been this close. We've never made it this far with a bill of this magnitude, and to have it pass off the floor with such a strong vote, I think really shows the people of Idaho that we're here to fight for these kids, and we're here to make sure that all of these kids have an opportunity that will serve them well.
And as the three of you know, and Senator Groh, I'll give you a chance here in just a second, but I forgot to put up this graphic because I think it's important to point out. We heard a lot of people say, oh, the people don't want this, the people don't want this. The polling that we did shows that the people actually were very much in favor of a tax credit. 66% support on the screen there, 73% among Republicans, 61% among independents, even majority support among Democrats as well. So the notion that this was not popular is the exact opposite from what the reality is, Senator Groh.
I'll just say this before our chaplain gave the prayer this morning. He talked about, he quoted somebody, politicians worry about the next vote, for their election, and a statesman worries about doing what is right. And I commend the 20 senators. There's a lot of pressure against us on this thing, a ton of pressure. I commend the 20 senators that had the courage to vote for what they thought was right and not be rolled over worrying about the next election, because I'm sure there will be some folks that are not happy with us that they want to get us out.
I don't think that can ever be the case, can it?
Comes around every 2 years, Chris.
Thank you to all three of you. You've just done an absolutely amazing job on this subject. We were happy to provide any research that you needed. So congratulations to you. We will see you for other bills and for other research later on in session.
Thank you.
And Chris,
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate your support.
The polling and your encouragement.
Thank you, all three of you. I'm going to bring Jason Mercier back in, of course, our Vice President for Research at Mountain States Policy Center. Jason, as Senator Den Hartog said, a pretty historic day and something I think a lot of people thought they would not see happen here in Idaho for a long time.
Yeah, and Chris, especially for me in particular, I'm always focused on the facts, on the policy, and not the emotion. But I just want to take a moment to what we just witnessed and what we just heard, just the joy from the lawmakers that worked on this. And I think you see that joy and that emotion, realizing what's just been accomplished, what the opportunities are now for, whether you want to say it's a few amount of students or the potential to grow down the road, realizing every child in Idaho should have the opportunity for success, for economic success. And that's based upon a good educational foundation, and knowing that's going to need to be individualized. And now that they will have this option for those that were falling through the cracks, didn't quite find the right fit in the amount of options and choices that were currently available. I think that's why you saw that amount of joy from the sponsors realizing those doors have now been opened. And I think it's also a reflection, these lawmakers, they're real people. And as they indicated, a ton of pressure one way or another for this. And I think when you watch that debate, even though it was an emotional debate, it was a charged debate, some say it could have been some big negative spots. It was conducted respectfully. And I think that's a credit to all sides of this and to Idaho, that we could have a civil debate on something where there are very strong emotions, but now realizing now that the vote has been cast, and again, pending what the governor does, it's time to turn the page and make sure that this is successful for students going forward.
We're going to take a short break here. Jason and I will be back in just a moment with our continuing coverage of the votes in the Idaho State Senate to adopt education choice. Idaho joins the 30 or so other states that have an expanded education choice program, and we'll talk more about that here in just a moment.
She's no nonsense.
It's okay. Be here, end up murdering the children of American citizens. You know what's
a former judge, a former district attorney, and now co-host of The Five.
If we have the will and the determination to ignore the noisy minority.
Judge Janine Pirro is coming to North Idaho, and you're invited to the festivities. Join Judge Janine at the Coeur d'Alene Resort on Friday, April 11th. Tickets are going fast. Register now at mountainstatespolicy.org. That's mountainstatespolicy.org.
My husband and I, we have 3 daughters, 1 teenager, 8-year-old, and a 4-year-old. For our family, personally, we've chose to homeschool them. Private schools, Christian schools, they're just very expensive. We live in America, and we're based on freedom, right? So we do what's best for our families. And if our tax money is already going to just one option, how are we going to have any other opportunities? For our children, be more open-minded and let the American family choose where their money's going to go for their child or what school they want to choose.
Welcome back to Peak Policy here at Mountain States Policy Center. I'm Chris Cargill, the president of Mountain States Policy Center, coming on the air on a very historic day, as you just saw in our first segment. Education choice, a universal tax credit, has passed the Idaho Legislature, something that has never happened before in Idaho history. So it is a remarkable day, something that we've been watching for quite some time. A lot of people have said, why does MSPC support the idea of more education choice options? Well, part of the reason is because we have the research that shows it's successful. And if you want a copy of that research, you can go to our website, mountainstatespolicy.org. You can get a copy of the policy manual here, which is has a whole section on education. Also, you can get a copy of these 2 studies on homeschooling families and private school families saving the state a whole bunch of taxpayer money, the legal questions on expanding education choice, and a whole lot more. Just go to mountainstatespolicy.org if you'd like your copy of that research. Jason Mercier joins me again here to kind of wrap things up. And Jason, we'll see if we have a few legislators who are running around from like chickens with their heads cut off today. And we were expecting a few more to join us. We'll see if that happens here in our closing minutes. But I do think it's important to take a look at the fact that other states are doing the very same thing that we are watching here in Idaho. In fact, they're doing it today. We just saw Wyoming. It's happening in Montana. It's happening in other states as well. I know you've been watching that very, very closely.
Yeah, again, as we indicated when the show opened, without House Bill 93 passing, it really was a possibility. It was going to be Idaho with the left coast against the rest of the country. Because when you look at that previous map that we had there, you can add Texas to that map because they are going to be passing it here very shortly. North Dakota is about to pass it as well, so you'll be able to add them to that map. So you really were looking at just having Washington, Oregon, California, and Idaho, with the exception of a couple of handful of other states, that didn't provide some type of option, whether it was an ESA, a tax credit, or a tax scholarship. And it's when you think about all the other things that Idaho does for individual liberty and for empowering parents and trying to provide the amount of options and choices for individuals to make for their lives, this one debate on education, on arguably the most important thing for the economic outlook for a citizen and for a child's success, why we would deny that here Well, now we don't have to wonder that anymore. House Bill 93 has put us on this path. And I think this kind of gets back to what you were talking about. Well, why does a market organization care about this, right? Well, it's the same reason the taxpayer does. You want to have an educated society. You want to have a society who understands civics. That's good for your business climate. That's good for the health of the country. But you also need to have individual freedom and liberty to make the best choices for your family. And when you think back to what we were talking about with this particular bill, it's not just on this, right? Obviously, Mountain States Policy Center provided the research about why this choice is good for parents. But also just in this past week, we were testifying in support of a proposal from Superintendent Critchfield to focus funding on the student, the student weighted formula. The same reason, right? We need to think beyond checking the box that we have funded a system. That doesn't do anybody good. All of the investments that we're making is to fund a student, to provide the resources for the student to have the best outcome for success and not care about what path that goes down. So whether that's in the traditional public system, in the charter school system, in the magnet schools, in the private schools, or in homeschooling, let's give families the opportunity and the resources to make the decisions. Because, as we heard from a lot of the sponsors of this, the accountability, a parent is not going to pick a situation that they know their child's not going to succeed in. Maybe one parent will, but I can't think of across the board that we're saying that a parent wakes up each day saying, well, how do I cheat the system and how do I make sure my child is not set up for the best economic opportunity in life? That's kind of where that check comes in. And now we need to trust the parents to make those decisions.
Jason, I know we've kind of checked the box, if you will, on this particular issue now that it is passed both chambers. Again, we wait and see what the governor is going to do. But there are other issues, as you mentioned, that the legislature in not only Idaho, but other states are working on as well. So let's quickly just talk about maybe 2 or 3 of the top issues that we're watching in each of the states. And then again, for folks who are watching, if you have any questions, comments, you want to put them in the chat, go ahead and do that. I know we got folks watching live on all social media channels across the region, and some will be watching on a delayed basis. But if you have questions or comments, put them into the chat. Jason, what about some of the other states and some of the other issues that we're watching in Idaho as well?
Yeah, so Mountain States Policy Center, we have 4 states that we're focusing on: Idaho, Wyoming, Montana, and Washington. Now, for Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming, you had 2 main issues that are the same in all 3 of those states. They were the education choice debate. You can now see for Wyoming and Idaho, those boxes can be checked. Montana could be voting as soon as today on their version of a tax credit. And the other big issue in all 3 of those states is tax relief. For Idaho, that is focused on the grocery tax credit and on a substantial income tax reduction. In Montana, it's been on income tax reduction and on property taxes. In Wyoming, it's been on property taxes. So the education choice has been a big focus, and how to provide more tax relief back to citizens has been the other huge focus. Now, that's 3 of the 4 states. The 4th state that we follow, Washington, unfortunately, is taking the opposite direction. They're not looking at tax relief. They're looking at how to increase taxes, whether that's repealing voter-approved restrictions on property tax increases, whether it's imposing a tax per every mile that you drive, and whether it has to do with creating brand new taxes for how many employees you hire or how much your employees earn. So for 3 of the 4 states, we've got education choice and tax relief. For Washington, it's tax increases, and we'll see where the next few weeks bring us in those debates.
Yeah, for anyone who wants to know more about the legislation that's being introduced, we would highly recommend going and visiting Wonk. He is our AI computer-generated legislative expert on our website, mountainstatespolicy.org. Go on there. You can find all the bills that are being introduced in all the different states and ask Wonk any questions that you might have. He will give you a plain English explanation of what the bill would do. So you don't have to worry anymore about being a legal expert or understanding all the ins and outs of every single piece of legislation. Wonk is there to help you understand it. One of the other issues, Jason, I know that's getting a lot of traction or a lot of attention, at least nationally in Washington, is this I guess you would call it an obsession with getting rid of George Washington off the state flag. That is one of 1,900 bills, almost 1,900 bills that are being introduced. And I guess there are some people who find that a priority, but others who might get a little upset at a bill like that.
Yeah, one of our colleagues for our sister organization in Washington had we're all about efficiency in the free market. So among the bills in Washington, as well as redesigning the state flag, is to declare the gooey duck, I believe, the state clam or something. So his suggestion was you could combine the two and make the state flag the gooey duck.
That's right. That's right. Jason Mercier is our Vice President, Director of Research at Mountain States Policy Center. Jason, thanks for joining us on this historic day. I appreciate it, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, thanks, Chris.
And again, thank you for very much for joining us. Make sure you check out mountainstatespolicy.org, mountainstatespolicy.org, if you want to learn more about the education choice bill that has just passed the Idaho State Senate. It has passed now both chambers in Idaho, now moves on to Governor Brad Little's desk, and we'll see what happens from there. But a historic day in the state of Idaho as education choice has passed the Idaho Legislature. I want to thank Senators Den Hartog, Groh, and Taves for joining us, and for all of the legislators who spend so much time working on behalf of the citizens of our state, and to the representatives as well. I'm Chris Cargill. Thanks very much for joining us here on Peak Policy, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching Mountain States Policy Center. To stay up to date on the work of MSPC, visit mountainstatespolicy.org or find us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Mountain States Policy Center. Free markets first.